I want to bring in former Secret Service agent Charles Marino to talk about this. Charles, thanks for being here.
Sure. Good morning.
Good morning. Based on what we know right now, which, I mean, the details, we know a little bit more than we did yesterday about what happened. But, from the agent apparently spotting the barrel of the gun through a fence while the suspect was crouched in the bushes, to a witness being able to take a picture of the suspect's license plate as he drove away, to the be on the lookout alert that triggered the license plate reader in Martin County along the I-95 that led to his capture. What is your assessment so far about the successes and failures?
There were both, and both can be true at the same time when it comes to the mission of the Secret Service. We saw an exceptional response, once again, from the inner ring of security that provides security immediately around the former president. You had agents in advance out ahead of the former president by about 500 yards, conducting their advance of the route, looking for threats. And once they determined they saw the barrel of this weapon coming through the fence, they took justified action against the suspect. Now, where the failures are, and this is a question the Secret Service has to answer, has to once again do with the perimeters, the same conversation we had about Butler, Pennsylvania. And that is the Secret Service planning and providing resources to meet the specific threat level of the former president? For example, should there have been more resources on the outer perimeter of the club, kind of scouring, looking for potential threats and serving as an overall deterrence to people like this suspect? That it has to be answered by the service. It has not yet. As far as the investigation of this individual, it's no surprise that he came to the attention of local law enforcement. I also wouldn't be surprised if we hear that he was on the radar of both the FBI and the Secret Service based on his actions having to do with the war in Ukraine. But what I can tell you is that we still have outstanding questions. We still have not heard, for example, the results of a search warrant on his vehicle. Were there additional weapons, for example, in that vehicle that he fled in? And also, were there items of what we call protective interest, meaning are there details in the vehicle that would provide information about any type of surveillance that this suspect was conducting on the former president, to include maps of the golf club, maps of Mar-a-Lago, maybe any other notes or items of interest? That's going to be important for us to hear. As far as law enforcement goes, they need to continue to be transparent. This is one of the lessons learned from Butler. They did not get out ahead of this. They did not communicate with the American public the way they needed to, and they need to change that in this situation. But the American people have to be assured that the former president, the current president, the Democratic nominee, Kamala Harris, that they're all protected the way that they need to be by the agency.
Well, and we know that this suspect was apparently 300 to 500 yards away, 2 golf holes away from the former president. I mean, does that seem remarkably close to you? And all of the experts that we've talked to in really less than 24 hours, because this happened just before 2 yesterday, have said how difficult it is to secure a place like a golf course. The Palm Beach County Sheriff himself yesterday said he's not the president, so he doesn't have that full detail. I mean, there are so many questions about what resources the Secret Service right now is lacking and what they need. Will it come down to resources?
Well, if you're staffing according to the title alone, then this is going to keep happening. And that's why I bring up the important point of staffing and resourcing and planning to the threat level that the protectee, the former president, is actually facing. If the Secret Service is going to say, look, we're going to just staff this the way we think a former president should be staffed, that is not going to fly with the American public. And it's certainly not going to meet the threats that the former president is facing, both domestically and from foreign adversaries like Iran. based on the actions he took against Soleimani. So I can tell you that they're going to have to provide more and more resources to achieve the mission and provide that overall ring of security. Again, 3 concentric rings, an inner perimeter, middle perimeter, and outer perimeter, that's going to serve as a greater deterrence and provide a buffer. Because if we rely on the inner perimeter security, the detail that's assigned to the former president full time to have to react each and every time, something's going to get missed. And the former president is going to get hurt again, or he's going to ultimately be killed, which we do not want to have happen.
Charles, always appreciate you. Thank you.